Okay, I'm back. We are in our series Deep, where we're talking about the things that deepen our faith. And today we're gonna talk about something that has the potential to do just that. It's something you and I have no control over, but it's something that still has incredible potential to shape our faith. Okay, but first, story time. When I was in middle school, I went away to camp for the first time, for a whole week. I was so excited, but also really nervous. Now, when I got there, my camp counselor had this huge gnarly gash on his leg, just this terrible, it was gross. And I was like, dude, where did you get that? And he told me, beaver sharks. Hey! And I thought to myself, what in the world is a beaver shark? And he told me it's like this beaver that lives in the river, but has these crazy sharp teeth like a shark. So for the rest of camp, I was terrified of beaver sharks. It was awful. Also, in case you're wondering, beaver sharks are not real animals. He made this up. I learned that eventually, a year ago. But for real, sometimes we face even harder things in life than getting told beaver sharks are a real thing. In my life, I had to move to a completely new part of the country once, and it was so hard. I had to say goodbye to friends, my church, and all the cool places I used to hang out. Maybe you've gone through something like that. In fact, I bet you or someone you know has. For so many of you, life is hard right now. You're dealing with things like death, sickness, rejection, loneliness, anxiety, or stress. Maybe you or someone you love is struggling with an illness. Or maybe you've recently lost a loved one. Maybe you went through a breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or even a close friend, and now you're feeling really rejected and alone. Maybe one of your parents lost their job and your family's worried about the future. Or maybe you're sitting here today thinking, actually, my life is pretty great. If that's you, that's great. But hear me out on this. Eventually, life gets hard for all of us. Unfortunately, tough times are just a part of life. Maybe it's not today. It might be tomorrow, or next month, or next year, or in a couple years. But at some point, we're all gonna experience a really tough situation in our lives. And that's what I wanna talk about today. When tough times come, when our lives feel broken beyond repair, that doesn't have to be the end of the story. Because yes, difficult things are gonna happen in our lives, but if we let Him, God can use those things to grow our faith in new, deeper ways. Now, God doesn't cause bad things to happen to you so that your faith can grow. The tough seasons of your life happen because the world isn't the way God intended it to be. These bad things on their own aren't the things that build our faith. What allows these events to build our faith is how we respond to them. These circumstances can either push you towards God or totally away from Him. It's all about the way you respond. I think maybe the best illustration of tough times changing someone's faith comes from the life of Jesus Himself. And we find this story in the book of John, one of the 4 books of the Bible written about Jesus' life on earth. Okay, just like you and me, when Jesus was on earth, He had friends. Yes, Jesus had friends. And you know what? I bet they didn't flake on Him when they were supposed to hang out. You hear that, John? I'm kidding, John's great. And 3 of His closest friends were siblings named Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Jesus loved and cared about these individuals a lot, probably just like you care about your friends. So in chapter 11 of the book of John, we find out that Lazarus was sick. His sisters, Mary and Martha, were super worried about him. So they sent a messenger to Jesus to tell him what was going on with Lazarus. Mary and Martha knew Jesus had healed many people, even strangers. So when Lazarus became sick with a life-threatening illness, they called Jesus to come help. They probably didn't even question it. Of course Jesus would save Lazarus, right? Well, no. Actually, Jesus did exactly the opposite of what you'd expect Him to do. He did nothing. He stayed where He was and didn't go immediately to help or heal Lazarus. And while Mary and Martha were waiting for Jesus, Lazarus died. Imagine how confused and upset everyone must have been. Did Jesus make a huge mistake? He could have stopped his friend from dying, but He didn't. He let his friend die. When Jesus finally made His way to their house a few days after Lazarus had died, He was greeted by Martha, who had one very important thing to say. Let me read it for you. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask." It was a heavy moment. Jesus had healed so many people before. Strangers, enemies, people who seemed so undeserving, but He chose not to heal His friend. And now Martha wanted to understand why. She was standing in front of Jesus, broken and angry. But even then, she still believed that God would give Jesus anything He asked. She still believed and trusted God. That's what this moment was really all about. In the emotion of the circumstances, in the confusion and in the hurt and in the pain, the question for Martha is the same one we ask ourselves during really difficult times. Can we really trust God? Can we put our faith in him even when things don't work out as we hoped? Martha believed in Jesus even though her brother died. Jesus didn't show up on time to save her brother, but she still trusted him. Sure, she questioned him. She even told him how she felt. But still, she believed and trusted he was who he said he was, no matter what. John told us that after this, Jesus wept. So if you're sitting there wondering if Jesus is heartless or doesn't care, here's your answer. Jesus wept. He cried because he loved Lazarus. He loved Mary and Martha too, and because of their pain, he wept. Sometimes when life gets hard, our first response is to think that we are alone and that Jesus doesn't care. But what I love about this story is that we get to see Jesus' emotions. He cares about us. He cares about our pain. He shows up and he experiences it with us. Especially when life gets hard, he never stops loving us. But the story's not over. After that, Jesus did something crazy. He asked to remove the stone covering Lazarus' grave. Now, at this point, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 3 or 4 days. It could not have been pretty in the tomb. So this was a really strange request. But still, Jesus said, move the stone. And as it was moved, Jesus literally told Lazarus to come out of the grave. Crazy, right? You know what happened? Lazarus did. Lazarus walked out of his grave completely and totally alive. Listen, that was crazy, but Jesus was known for doing some pretty crazy things. Why? Well, this is how the story ended. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. Jesus used the whole situation, as terrible as it was, to grow people's faith. Even though she was hurting, Martha responded to the loss of her brother with belief in Jesus. And Jesus came through for her. And not just for her, but for so many others as well. Those tough circumstances made the faith of so many people go deeper. And the same can be true for your faith. God can use tough times to grow our faith. Tough times will happen. And sometimes when life gets hard, God intervenes. But sometimes he doesn't. Whatever the outcome, this story shows us what can be possible in the pain. Like Martha, it's possible for our faith to grow, for God to use difficulties to show us more about himself. It's possible to go through the toughest circumstances imaginable and come through trusting God more, not because he made it go away, but because he used it to grow you and show you more about himself. There's no pain or challenge so great that it keeps God from working in big ways in your life. He can use anything. God can use tough times to grow our faith. So what are we supposed to do with that? Well, I think we can start by taking a tip from what Martha did during her really difficult time in her life that we just read about. First, be honest with God. Martha didn't just immediately greet Jesus with belief and trust. No, she told him how she felt about what she was going through, and she was honest with him. And we can be honest with him too. When we're going through difficult circumstances, the first thing we should do is talk honestly to God about it. Just like Jesus was with Lazarus, God is with us and wants to comfort us in our seasons of pain. Next, believe. Trust God with your circumstances. Choose to believe that no matter what the outcome is, God can use it to grow your faith. The next time you find yourself in the middle of a really hard time, simply pray, God, I trust you to grow my faith deeper. Don't worry, I'm not telling you to celebrate every bad thing in your life. That would be weird. Some of you are going through really hard times right now, and you're probably thinking, aren't there other ways for my faith to grow? Believe me, I get it. But don't miss the point here. The difficult things you're walking through aren't because of God. He isn't doing something to you. He's weeping right alongside you, just the way Jesus was over Lazarus. But if you allow him to, God can do something in and through these tough circumstances, not just to change your faith, but the faith of others around you too. So remember, God can use tough times to grow our faith. I want you to think about this question. What is one tough thing I'm going through in my life right now?